Okay, hello again, I'm back, and today's the 14th of August 2016, and this video is called How, and more importantly When, You Can Do an Intuitive Reading. And it's about how different activities belong with different stages of learning. And it's important to get the order of learning right, otherwise you misinterpret what you're doing and how you're doing it. So if you're a beginner with reading the tarot, or really with any kind of skill that you're developing, you might follow somebody's advice on what to do at whatever stage you're at, but you can end up getting ahead of yourself. And so things don't go well. And it's not that you're not very good at doing whatever it is that you're trying to do, or in this case, it's not that you're not very good at reading the tarot, but you're trying to make things work in the wrong order. So in this video, I'm going to give you an explanation of what's going on, or at least one way of looking at what's going on. So this way you get a more realistic idea of what to do and what's possible. So you don't assume that you're not very good, or that you're never going to get it, and you're always going to be doomed to being unable to read the tarot. And I'm doing this partly because a few people emailed recently about using intuition, how to read cards. And I also finished a section in the tarot book that is going to become the tarot-book.com about how to develop skill. So from my point of view, it made sense to make this video. So round about 1980, okay, two brothers in California, the name is Dreyfus. They presented a short academic paper outlining a model of how students of anything develop skill. And their idea was that people pass through 5 stages, going from knowing not really anything to becoming skillful. And the 5 stages are, as they named them, the novice, competency, proficiency, expertise, and mastery. Right? So you begin not knowing anything, you end up knowing a lot. And this is one model. And of course, other writers and academics and psychologists came up with their own versions of what's apparently really going on. But when you read, or if you come across competing versions of the model, we have to remember that for academics and for psychologists, the key word or the key idea is publish or die, right? You've got to be writing and being published in all sorts of journals and books. Otherwise, you won't get hired and people won't take you seriously. So you've got to publish. But if you have to publish or die, and you don't have anything new to say, what you end up doing, and what a lot of people do, is they take what somebody else has written and try to disprove it, right? Even if they can see the sense of the first argument, they try to prove that it's wrong so that they can then have writing credit. So it can become a little bit messy. So if you come across other people who give you a different model, they may have had their own reasons for writing what they wrote. So this model, the Dreyfus model, we're going to use as a starting point and see what they tell us about what's going on, so that we can become skillful at reading the tarot, which I am assuming is what we all want to do. So their model, the Dreyfus model, is a good starting point. And you might come up with other words for the different stages that we're going to look at. Or maybe you come up with a different number of stages, but it's a place to start. So we can begin to get an idea of what's going on with learning new skills. And we should be able to apply these characteristics of the different stages in other areas of life too, not just with learning the tarot. So if you're learning accounting, understand that there are steps that you go through. If you want to learn Photoshop, then your behavior in the beginning of learning Photoshop is going to change, is going to be different from what your behavior would be like later once you know a bit. So if you're trying to learn to do something well, you're going to go through different stages, and this is one model. We can remember too that when we're doing readings for other people and we're talking to the questioner about what to do, if we remember the 5 stages that anybody's going through or that anybody goes through to learn a skill, we talk to the questioner correctly or in harmony with the stage they are at in their, let's say they want to learn how to develop a good relationship, right? There's what you do and what's appropriate at the beginning of learning how to develop a good relationship, and what you're going to do when you've been at it for a while or you've got experience. So you can think about the question that the person asks and look on it as developing a certain skill, and understand that the question is going to go through different stages of developing expertise in that particular area. So I'm going to tell you about the 5 stages so you can know where you are with learning to read the tarot as well. And in this way, you're not going to expect too much of yourself, and you're not going to expect to be able to do what you can't do based on the stage that you're at. And at the same time, when we get to the information about the later stages, the more expert stages, you're going to know what's coming up for you or what you're going to be able to do in the future. So you're going to know your own future, because the future doesn't suddenly appear. You know, you're not going to wake up tomorrow with amazing skills, but you're going to know how to build up to it. So the 5 stages that the Dreyfus brothers identified are novice, competence, proficiency, expertise, and mastery. So we're going to look at these stages in turn, though maybe just look at 4 of them anyway, because expertise and mastery are kind of the same. But in the beginner stage, for anybody in the beginner stage, what happens is we follow the rules as they have been given to us. And we want to follow the rules exactly so we don't make mistakes. We basically want somebody to tell us what to do, right? And that's what's happening in the novice or the beginning stage of learning the tarot. I'm going to talk about learning the tarot rather than learning other skills, although it can be applied in other areas as well. So because we want to be told what to do in the beginning, this can be why when we first start reading cards, we want to find the answer in a book, right? And we look in the book for the meaning. And this can also be why we get stuck with a reading and we don't know what to say. We can look in the book and read out the meaning of the card, but then we don't know what else to say. And this is because we're in the beginner stage. So getting stuck like this is normal, and it's to be expected. And it doesn't mean you're no good or that you'll never be any good. It just means that you're in the beginner stage. So if you can recognize this and understand it's part of what goes along with being a beginner, then you can relax. And this can be important because when you're a beginner, you feel as if you ought not to be looking for answers in a book. But while we're in the beginner stage, trying to do it on our own is going too fast. But by using, in using the book, if we look at using the book as a step along the way, then we can relax and understand what's actually going on. Because the next step is when you become competent, right? So the step after the beginner is competency. And you know what you're doing. You've got a bit of experience. You know how to lay a spread, or what the different positions mean, or what different cards mean, or what different cards point to, right? So you can still be reading the book for answers, but you aren't as rigid in sticking to the words that are in print. And sticking rigidly to the words in print, it belongs at the beginner stage. And this is what we all do in the beginning. But with competency, you can more quickly go to the type of meaning that will answer the question, right? You're more able to make decisions about a card and about a spread, whereas in the beginning you want to be told what to do, right? So you might get the 7 of Batons, right? And you read in the book and you read that this is a card of victory, right? Because the person's sitting on a horse in the rider deck anyway. He's sitting on a horse, he's got his supporters around him, and everybody's celebrating. And so victory is the kind of meaning you work with in the beginning. But as you become competent, you begin to see more. And you can look at the card and say, okay, this card shows victory. But for your question right now, what's more important is that the victor has his supporters. So you should concentrate on being part of a team and not so much on the victory. But instead make sure that the support staff are in place and they are also the right people for the job. Okay, so the reader's still working with the card and what it shows, but you're kind of taking it a step further, and you, the reader, are making some decisions on your own so you can move the reading forward, move it along. So going from rigid adherence to the rules to making your own decisions is one kind of expansion, but there's a greater change when you go from competency to proficiency and expertise, because you're no longer just following the rules or trying to use the written meanings that you read in books and apply them to the question. Because at this point, after you become competent, you've some knowledge and experience. So you've begun to develop connections within cards or between cards. And I was thinking about the best way to express this, and I thought maybe we could think of it as creating nets. Right? So whereas as a beginner, each idea or each meaning of a card was a kind of independent thought on its own. But now, because you've had some practice and you've seen some of the tarot in operation or working out in the lives or through the lives of the people who asked you questions, you can begin to tie ideas together, or you can make nets that can become more tight, or maybe they've got smaller holes. So it's as if in the beginning, this is one card and this another card, and then you've got this more information, but then as you become competent, you can begin to join them together so it's much more solid and more self-contained. You know what I mean? And the spaces between the different cards and the different thoughts become smaller. So that in the beginning, this is reading cards, but later, this is how you read a card. So, with competency, your thinking makes connections, because our brains work fast, and we refer to this quick thinking as intuition that can come up with its own but correct combinations. So in the beginning, and before we've had experiences that produce knowledge, what passes for intuition is guesswork. And you might be right, but you could just as easily be wrong. And in the beginning, you wouldn't really bet on your intuition being correct. But with proficiency, later, your intuition is more right, and you'd be more likely to put money on it being correct, and you would trust it to be pointing you in the right direction. But your intuition works better because you've got some knowledge and understanding behind it, and that's different. That's the difference from the earlier stage. So I'm mentioning all this because a lot of people will tell you right from the beginning, right from the start with your tarot studies, you should trust your intuition, develop your intuition. But this is wrong. You shouldn't, you can't, don't do it because you don't have knowledge. And what passes for intuition in the beginning is just guessing. Because in the beginning, with cards and meanings and spreads, it's all bits and pieces. But as you develop expertise, you've got a better chance of seeing the whole picture. You can know what's going on. And this is one reason to lay a spread face down to begin with and turn the cards one at a time and make sense of them on your own as part of a gradually unfolding picture or answer. And then later, once you've turned everything over, you can make sense of the whole spread. But if you turn all the cards face up in the beginning, you're still, when you're new to the tarot, you're still at the point of wanting to follow the rules. But there are too many rules and they're too complicated and they can cancel each other out. Right, so let's say you turn a few cards and you've got the sun upright in the spread. So, okay, the question is confident. But the devil reversed is there, so you've got doubts and you feel trapped. But the ace of batons is there too, so you want to make a fresh start. But the ten of swords is there, so you think you're going to be stabbed in the back and you can't trust people. And on and on. You've got all these contradictory influences pulling you in different directions. So, at a later stage, but not in the beginning, you can prioritize. You can look at the spread and you can know what to do with it or what makes sense. But you don't know this in the beginning. Later, you've got some way of knowing if the sun, for instance, is stronger than the reverse devil. And maybe it is because it's got support from other cards, or maybe it's stronger because of its position in the spread. In the beginning, you want somebody to tell you what the answer is. Later, you're able to figure it out for yourself. Because what you're doing is you're judging this and that, right? But you're not putting every thought into words as you go along. And you're not really making it up as you go along, even though it might seem that way to an outsider. But you're looking at the card or the cards, and you're making many little decisions quickly, and you're arriving at a conclusion. But the difference between that and in the beginning is that your decisions later have some background. Or you've got some reason for choosing this rather than that because you've got experience. And because you're developing intuition to guide your decisions and seeing the whole picture, or how the past, present, and future go together, you know when to break the rules. Okay, because sometimes you're going to look at the card and it normally means one thing, but in this particular spread, it means something different. And why? Because it just does, and you know why. It's a bit like with art and painting. You know what colours go together to produce harmony, a harmonious picture. But some artists can add a bit of the wrong colour, but it works, right? And it makes the painting more interesting and it makes it better. And this is because they know when to break the rules. And that's the kind of ability you develop with reading the tarot. The other one last point about expertise and mastery is that as you get experienced and practiced, you can look at card combinations or cards on their own, and you can make sense of it all, even if you've never seen it before. So there's no limit to what you can do. In the same way that you can read a book, even if you've never read those same words in that particular order before, you read it and you know what sense it makes. But with reading the tarot, as you become experienced, you can you're not looking at a card and making it up from nothing, but you're starting from a position of knowing, which means being able to see that a thing is identical with another thing. So in the end, you realize that in the beginning, you wanted a book with all the answers, right? But now you see that the tarot itself is the book with all the answers, but the pages appear in random order, and it's up to the reader to make sense of them. Okay, that's it for the moment. The last couple of weeks, I've been concentrating on finishing the text for the tarot book and the site, and it's almost done. So, the text is almost done. So I should be working on the site this week, and I would hope to have it up and running in the next 10 days or so. But there'll be a new video next weekend, and I'll give you an update then about the tarotbook.com. So that's it from me. Have a good week, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.